Come on, living stone. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, living stone.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, living stone.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, living stone. We gotta go.
This week on Talk Livi, I'm absolutely honoured to be welcoming a legend of our football club. He is the captain who lifted the League Cup on the 14th of March 2004. It is the one and only Stuart Lovell. Stuart, how are you doing?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, really good. Just working away as everyone is, trying to get used to, this new life that is kind of post-COVID. If we're allowed to call it post-COVID, yeah, I suppose it's still technically still going on. But yeah, just trying to kind of navigate a way through, return to some form of normality and keeping busy and keeping sane. All the things that seemed so easy to do 18 months ago and maybe not so easy now.
Yeah, exactly. And now, I feel like I say this with every ex-Livingston player, but your spell in West Lothian was pretty eventful. But it all started in the summer of 2001 when you signed for the club from Hibs. Now, how did that move all materialise, Stuart?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it wasn't something that I envisaged. If I'm honest, the third season at Hibs was probably my best one from a form perspective. Quite weird in that I ended up playing the whole season or pretty much the whole season at right wing back in a 3-5-2, which was designed to kind of get the best out of players like Frank Soze and Russell Latterby. So Frank went into a back three and Russell kind of played a floating role behind the front two, and we needed two guys that could charge up and down the wing.
You had to do the running essentially, is what you're saying.
yeah, the graveyard shift, as I used to call it. So we actually had a guy called Tam Smith that Alec McLeish had signed from Clydebank, and I think he was a good fit for the position. But sadly, Tam suffered a really bad knee injury, which pretty much finished his career, which was a terrible shame. You never want to see that happen to a teammate. And I was kind of thrown into that position I think initially just to kind of keep the seat warm until they found someone better, and they didn't find anyone better. So I played, the majority of the season there at right wing back with Ulrich Lausen playing left wing back. And I think even though we were different players, he was, big Scandinavian dude, blonde hair, blue eyes, 6'3", galloping down the left side. I was not exactly that, but I was fit. I was always a good runner, and I was, comfortable having the ball at my feet. And I think I always felt I was quite an unselfish player. I put the team first, and you needed to be that, to play that role well. So yeah, kind of, got through the season and came to the last game of the season. And I think it was at that point I started to kind of wonder where I was positioned in the squad at Hibs. I played, pretty much the whole season, but when it came to the Scottish Cup final against Celtic, I got left out. Alec McLeish decided to play Ian Murray in that position, and that was a pretty tough one to swallow, because I didn't see it happening, and two, I didn't feel it was a fair decision. But the manager makes a call, but it kind of got me thinking about no one's undroppable, and I kind of assumed that I was a regular. And then one of the coaches at Hibs, who should remain nameless, was kind enough to kind of mark my card and say, listen, the gaffer has signed two guys on a pre-contract. This was Alan Orman and Ulysses de la Cruz, and he said both of them play in your position. And he basically kind of said, look, the gaffer really likes you, and he knows you're versatile and you can play in a number of positions, but you kind of, you may well find that you're not playing as regularly as you did last season. That didn't sit well with me. I was 29. I felt that I was better than, being a bit part player and potentially a squad player at Hibs. And as much as leaving a team that had just finished third and had given the old firm a really good run for their money and had got to the Scottish Cup final, I wanted to play week in and week out. And it was actually John Robertson that kind of teed up the move. He mentioned to me that they'd been watching me that season. They were really interested in bringing in experienced players into the group at Livi who had just been promoted to the SPL for the first time. And he said, "We know we've got to raise the quality." So Livi was a very unusual project, but Robbo made the call and said, "Would you come and speak to us?" And then teed up the conversation to speak with Dominic Keane, Jim Leishman primarily, and I obviously met Davie Hay as well. And I liked all of them. I always got on really well with Robbo. I'd heard good things about him as a coach. Davie Hay was actually a favourite player of my dad's from my dad's a big Chelsea fan. So he was like, wow, working with Davie Hay. Everyone loves Jim Leishman. He's just a brilliant guy and just easy to get on with. And I hit it off with the chairman as well. So, it wasn't a difficult sell in terms of the club. They were very optimistic about, the first season in the SPL. And it was kind of rammed down my throat numerous times. We're not just here to stay up. We're not just here to make up the numbers. And they mentioned one or two of the guys that they were looking at, in terms of bringing into the squad, guys who'd kind of played regularly at other clubs, Gary Boland, Nathan Lowndes. They were two guys that I knew from St Johnstone. I kind of thought, this could be a really interesting project. And it was kind of more of a gut feeling, if I'm honest. I think I remember when kind of Alan Shearer was telling the story about when he left Southampton and he went to Blackburn. Everyone was like, "Where did you go to Blackburn?" I just thought I had a gut feeling about the project, and it was very much the same for me with Livingston. I just kind of felt that it was going to work out. It was a bit of a gamble, but I was comfortable with the decision then, and I'm still comfortable with the decision now.
It obviously paid off in the end, which we will get into. But as you say, the club had just been promoted from the First Division, so. What was the ambition initially when you went in? It's obviously the cliche one is stay up, but did the club envisage that they could push a little bit further in the first season, or was it just kind of stay up and then see how it goes?
I think it was probably somewhere in between. Let's be honest. None of us thought we were going to finish third. I don't think anyone even considered that a possibility. But we were kind of adamant that bottom was not, a good ambition for us. Yeah. And I remember Jim Traynor, the inimitable Jim Traynor, who was writing a column for the Daily Record at the time, and he had his own radio show on the BBC, and Jim wasn't short of an opinion or three, and he wrote an article which, not just Jim Traynor, but lots of people were kind of suggesting that, Livi would be cannon fodder. And it's just, to be honest, it's kind of lazy journalism that people who can't think outside the box and they're not looking at the signings. It's the easiest thing in the world to say the team that's just come up is going to struggle. Yeah. They won't be able to bridge the gap or this type of thing. But he wrote I thought it was quite a scathing piece, to be honest. So it got cut out and posted up on the dressing room mirror, I think it was, in the first team dressing room, and it never came down. It stayed up there the whole season, so that anytime we had a little bump in the road or anything like that, we just kind of pointed at it to say, these are the people that we've got to prove wrong. I do think that the start of the season was massively important to us because we had a really tough start. We had Hearts at home, who, I think they were a strong side. Obviously, they were certainly a top six side. And then we had to play Rangers at Ibrox and then Celtic at home. So, pretty tough gig. And we didn't lose any of the games. We obviously beat Hearts and we drew against the Old Firm. So to pick up 5 points from those three games, I think very quickly the lads realised actually we can do more than just kind of fill a space in the league.
So Jim Traynor was the reason behind us getting European football then, essentially, is what you're trying to tell us.
To be honest, he doesn't deserve that much credit, and I'm not going to give him that much credit. All I'll say is he was a strong motivation, or his article was a strong motivation. And again, not to make it a cheap dig at Jim, because you've got to look at more reasons than just a journalist who's had a kind of pop at you. I think it was just helpful that he was very high profile. And I think that for some of the guys, this is the thing about professional football that I learned over the years, is that, when you play lots and lots and lots of games, sometimes you can go into matches, and fans would hate to think this is the case, but you have to find a reason. You have to find an edge. Yeah. You have to find a reason wherever, you think when you've played 250, I played over 250 games when I left Reading and went up to Hibs. So I was an experienced player, and fans expect you to be absolutely on the money and motivated for every single game. And you have to be able to find a way of being able to give yourself, sometimes you need to give yourself a right good talking to, because you've woken up on the wrong side of the bed and you turn up and you're like, I'm not really feeling this today. Yeah. It's not to say that you don't want to be there, but it's like Groundhog Day. And I know fans would be like, that's mental, to be able to be a professional footballer and earn a living playing football. I'd give my right arm to do that. And I understand that. But it's like any job, when you've been doing it for years and years and years, sometimes you can just lose the edge. And that's all it takes. That's all it takes. If you lose 10% of motivation, you're a different player. And if all your players think the same way, you're a different team. But I think we managed to kind of find a way to keep each other motivated that season. And obviously, the longer you're doing well, as the team did, the more you kind of realize that there's a goal that you can achieve. I don't know at which point we kind of thought that European football and potentially third place was achievable, but I think that we were taken for granted by a lot of teams in the SPL that season. I remember when we went to Rugby Park and we beat Kilmarnock 5-1 and it could have been 10. And I remember thinking they disrespected us because they were kind of, they played, they were playing very attacking and threw a lot of bodies forward, and we were brilliant on the counter attack. I remember kind of thinking, they just don't get it. Yeah. They don't realize what we are. We were really good at soaking up pressure and hitting teams on the counter. And I think it took teams until late in the season to actually suss out, we were decent.
Typical of football, your debut for the club, as you kind of touched on there, was come against Hearts, being an ex-Hibs player as well. What were your memories of that game, the first game for the club in the top flight?
I remember it being important that regardless of the result, we had to be able to show that we could be competitive in that match. I kind of knew that it didn't necessarily mean that we had to get 3 points. Obviously, that was the aim, but you had to be able to go out there and kind of bloody the nose of a big team, so that people would realise that that you can potentially be a force to be reckoned with. I think it was massively important for the players, for their own self-belief. Very helpful for the supporters as well to kind of understand that that we could also challenge the big teams and offer a threat. But I think from the the playing side and also from the coaching side, we needed to be able to have an impact against a strong side like Hearts. And again, I think that there were definitely some of their players that took us for granted. Mm-hmm. I remember we won that game. I thought we were really good value for it. If I remember correctly, I have a feeling that Colin Cameron scored a goal.
Yeah, it was last couple of minutes.
Late on a consolation, nothing more than consolation. And I remember he came down the tunnel afterwards and he actually said, "How the F in hell did we lose to that lot?" And I remember he didn't even get to the dressing room and Craig Levine was tearing strips off him because like you don't even track your runners and blah, blah. And they were having a row going back to their dressing room, and I thought it was an incredibly cocky comment from Colin Cameron, and I kind of had a little chuckle to myself thinking, another one bites the dust. But it was more to do, it was satisfying for me, obviously, as an ex-Hibs player, because I was, any ex-Hibs player is going to get a bit of stick from Heart fans and all that type of stuff. But it was nice to kind of be able to put one over on them, because again, they were considered to be one of the big clubs, good for our self-belief. But I think we were really good value for it. That wasn't a fluke. We were the better team throughout the game. And their consolation was exactly that. They were to be honest 2-1 flattered them. Yeah. And I think at that point, when the guys came in for training on the Monday, they were like, "Wow, we've actually got a team here." And it was probably a really good time to go to Ibrox, because it's always a very difficult venue, but the amount of confidence we got from beating Hearts, was really good impetus for us for the next two games against the Old Firm.
And as you say, those impressive results, 0-0 at Ibrox, the 0-0 at Arminvale against Celtic. Brotto saved the penalty with his shin, I think, if memory serves me right. But when during the season did the ambitions kind of change? When did you realise we're not going to get relegated? We can push a bit further this season?
Do you know, it's probably because it's so long ago. It's kind of difficult to to remember. I think I always kind of use my own rule of thumb in that you need to play everyone first to have an understanding of where you are in the league. And I can't remember exactly where we were after we'd played the full round of fixtures, but I'm pretty sure if we weren't third, we were very close. We were third or fourth. And I remember kind of thinking at that stage, okay, so that's one round of fixtures out the way. Where are we going to be after another 11 games? And I think at that point, that's where you look at it and think, okay, that's going to give us a better idea of you've got to get a good chunk of the way through the season before you can start thinking there's an opportunity to achieve something. But I think through the first round of fixtures, we were well placed. We hadn't had any drubbings. We hadn't had any embarrassing performances. And we had a lot of match winners in our team. We had a good variety of guys up front. Obviously, we had David Bingham, who was an incredibly creative player, very clever player. David Fernandez, who was phenomenal. That the harder it got, the better he was. He was a real scrap, as well as being a brilliant technical footballer. He liked it when it got a bit of rough and tumble. We had Barry Wilson, who was terrific with his delivery and chipped in with plenty of goals. And then we were supported by the likes of David Zauser as well, who was a terrific player. He was kind of in and out of the side, but he put pressure on those three to kind of keep the standards up. And then we had guys like Caputo who could come on and make a difference, and Nathan Lowndes. I mean, we had good attacking players, but you obviously need to be strong at the back. We had a brilliant goalkeeper in Javier Sanchez Brotto, and a good kind of back four or back five, whatever it is, they decided to go with. So, yeah, I think we had the shape of our squad was really good. There wasn't really a weak link. And as such, we had a balanced team that could kind of, if it became a kicking match, we could look after ourselves. But if it was a proper game of football, we could hold our own there as well, and that was important.
And as you say, there was a really good kind of mix in the squad. There was obviously a few foreign players, likes of guys that you've mentioned, likes of Brotto, Rubio, Kino, Fernandez, but there was also a good blend of experienced guys who had been there and done it in the top flight. What was the mood like in the dressing room? Did the foreign guys obviously interact? Did they keep themselves to themselves? And who were the really big personalities in the dressing room at that time, Stuart?
I think David Fernandez was massively important because he was obviously a key player. He was someone that was like one of the first names on the team sheet. I like to think I was as well. If you looked at Big Marv, Rubio, Manu Dorado, Sanchez, Brotto, there were guys that kind of, through the kind of core of the team, if you like, through the spine of the team, guys that would play week in and week out. But I think the thing with David Fernandez was that, occasionally if we did have a poor result, and it always hits you, you always come in feeling a little bit flat after a defeat or a poor performance, whatever it might be. David was very quick at kind of he just didn't do sulking, just wasn't in his nature. He was just positive person, outgoing, bubbly, happy, smiley, just a really good guy. Marvin wasn't as talkative as David Fernandez, but Marvin was a big personality and got on with everyone. And again, just didn't do feeling sorry for himself, And I think we had a number of guys, but those two are the ones that stick in my mind where they came in with a smile on their face. They went away with a smile on their face. You kind of, they exuded kind of confidence and, just kind of that happy, outgoing spirit. And I think those two were massively important. I think one of the things that I'd noticed, having been in dressing rooms where you had, people from different backgrounds, was it was important to try and avoid having cliques. So I kind of took it upon myself to try and make sure that we didn't have people sitting together in little groups of the Spaniards and or the foreign contingent or this and that. I wanted to try and make sure that we mixed. And I said this to the guys on the QT, just to kind of say, don't go and sit, with the guys that and knock around with. Just try and make sure that, when you come in and there's a place at lunch, just sit with the guys and get the guys to mix. And we kind of pushed that from pre-season to a certain extent. But once I got given the armband, which was kind of during the trip to Holland, that kind of crystallized. I kind of took it upon myself to think we've got to make sure if we're going to have a good team spirit, people have got to want to fight for each other, and they've got to get on. You've got to like each other, and that's, whenever I've been part of successful teams, it's always been when there's a really good spirit and the group get on. I know I've heard stories of like Teddy Sheringham and Andy Cole apparently couldn't stand each other, but they could still play in the same team. Yeah. And I know that can work, but it's not ideal. Yeah, it's definitely not ideal. You want people to kind of get on, and I try to make sure that we didn't have the cliques. And I remember when we went down to Newcastle for our Christmas do, and I kind of made a point of saying, right, we're all going out together, no cliques, we're going out as a group, we're going to the same places, we're sticking together. And you know what it's like. Some of the kind of British based players, they like a few beers more than maybe the foreign boys do. They certainly, we certainly had a few boys who could put a few drinks away. And I remember kind of knocking a few of the guys up on the Sunday to say we're going out again. I don't know, it was Kino or Fernandez or one of the guys, they were wanting to have a lie-in and said, come on, we're going down the pub. And they're like, again? They're like, we did that last night. And I said, that's what we're here for. And it was, guys didn't have to kind of sit and get bevied if it wasn't for them. They could sit and have a soda and lime or whatever it was, if that was what they wanted to do to recover. But it was important that they were there and part of the group. And I think we had that terrific spirit. That was definitely one of the key strengths of the squad, was the togetherness.
Actually, funny you mentioned Marvin in there as well. I remember when I was mascot, not trying to make you feel old at all, Stuart, but you were out injured at the time. And I remember, I know you used to dabble in a wee bet and used to read the Racing Post, and you came in and you were asking Marv for tips on the betting. And Marvin's just storming around the dressing room going, blasphemy, it's blasphemy.
Yeah. I did used to kind of have a copy of the Racing Post some days, and and I knew obviously that was against his beliefs. So it was good natured, he knew that I was winding him up, and when he said blasphemy, well, he probably meant blasphemy as well. But it was fine, and I think that's the thing, that you respect people's kind of positions. They're not always the same, but you have to kind of understand that there are different personalities in a dressing room. And it's one of the things where it frustrates me when people kind of say, they talk about management and the management of people, and they make it sound like it's easy. It isn't easy. Yeah. I've never gone into it. I mean, I had a brief spell as kind of caretaker when I was at Queen of the South right at the end of my career, and I only took the team for a couple of weeks. But, if you've got a squad of 18, 20 players and you can only pick 11, straight away, you're having to disappoint half of your group, and yet still keep them on side to be a sub, or even, God forbid, sitting in the stand, not even used. And yet you might need to use them a week or 2 weeks or a month down the line, and you've still got to keep them on side. And it's a difficult thing. And managing personalities with people with all different beliefs and backgrounds, and some guys who like a bevy and some guys who are teetotal, and yet you want to try and get them out together as a group to keep the spirit up. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but felt like it was pushing against an open door at Livingston, because we just had a lot of good guys. We had a lot of good people, and I think in that respect, you must give credit to the chairman, Dominic Keane, Jim Leishman, Davie Hay, and Robbo, because between the four of them, they were the guys that were obviously working together on the recruitment, and I thought they did a terrific job.
And as the team closed in on European football, you would score probably one of the most iconic goals in Livy history, which was your overhead kick against Rangers late on to secure a 2-1 win. What are your memories of the goal? And does Barry Wilson still curse you to this day that you managed to outdo him for goal of the game?
Yes, he does. Is he still bitter and twisted about it? Absolutely. I will say it was an absolutely brilliant goal by Baz, but barely gets a mention because it was an equaliser rather than a winning goal, and obviously my goal was right at the end of the game, and I still maintain my goal was better in terms of like artistic difficulty. Overhead kick always beats a volley into the top corner, as much as his was a great strike. But it was I'm lucky enough that it still gets a lot of love from the SPFL, and it kind of gets rolled out every now and then. They had a competition, or it was like Blast from the Past a while ago, not that long ago, and they were showing some of the best overhead kicks and mine kind of finished top of the tree. Whether it deserved to or not is by the by. It
definitely
finished
did.
kind of top.
It definitely
Yeah.
did.
No, well, I think in terms of importance, because there were some great goals on there, but that was a very late winning goal against Rangers, which of course was Alec McLeish's first defeat as Rangers manager, someone that I'd worked with for 3 years at Hibs. Yeah. The irony wasn't lost on me. I remember actually coming off after the game, and I bumped into Andy Watson, who was Alec McLeish's number 2, and he said, "You never effing did that for us at Hibs." With a there was a hint of kind of well done, but it was mainly like bitter and twisted. But no, they took it. I mean, Rangers weren't going to win the league, so it didn't really hurt them, other than the fact it was just a bit of a kind of a small dent in confidence for them, that they went on to to good things. When I think they won both the cup competitions, if I remember correctly, that season. But for us, it was absolutely huge, because we'd had a little bit of a wobble around that time, and we had been in the driving seat to finish third, and then it just kind of looked like the wheels had come off. And anytime you beat either side of the Old Firm is massive when you're a provincial club like Livingston. But it wasn't just the fact it was Rangers; it was the fact that it was 3 points and put us back in the pole position to finish third. And I think it kind of reinvigorated our season. We finished strongly enough, to obviously keep our noses ahead of Aberdeen and secure third place, which was amazing. I mean, in all my time in football, it's still the best achievement in terms of a team that was favourite to get relegated, finishing third in the league, which is astonishing when you think about it. I won a league title with Reading. I won a league with Hibs, and obviously won the League Cup with Livi. But in terms of achievements, that was the best for punching above our weight. That was far and away the biggest achievement in my career.
And as you say, we went on to secure third spot and European football. Who would ever imagine that after 1995 we'd be playing European football just 7 years later? And you featured in a couple of the games. You featured in the home game against Vaduz, and you actually managed to score another pretty special goal over in Austria as well. How special were those European nights, given how far the club had come in that short space of time?
I think there was just that kind of surreal feeling of playing in Europe, which, let's be honest, no one at the club would have thought was a possibility. First season in the SPL, and suddenly we're finishing third and qualifying for Europe. And then, of course, you're actually looking to see who you get in the draw. You have no idea where you're going to go. We actually had a really nice trip. Vaduz is technically in Liechtenstein, which of course no one has any idea where it is, but it was a beautiful part of Europe. We stayed in Switzerland, just over the border in Switzerland, which is a beautiful country in its own right. And then we travelled, we had a lovely bus journey. I remember kind of taking the scenery, and it was absolutely amazing. And the stadium where we played, FC Vaduz, was amazing. I actually missed the first game because I was having a lot of problems with my left knee at the time, and I was really struggling to manage it. And I just, I was not in a good place physically. So the plan was to leave it and come back for the return leg, where the rest did me good. I was fitter, but still not perfect. But we kind of scratched our way to a 1-1 draw away from home. It wasn't a great performance by any means. I remember kind of thinking, God, we shouldn't have made that look as hard work as it was. Yeah. And then I played in the home leg and kind of felt that we would be too strong for them, and we didn't play particularly well. We were definitely a better side than them, but we didn't hit our straps. And there was that extraordinary moment at the final whistle where they scored a goal just as the ref blew the whistle. Yeah, I remember. As you can imagine, they weren't best pleased. But I mean, I heard the whistle. To be honest, he actually let time run on far longer than he should have done. We were at least a minute over the added time. So, he should have blown the whistle before the corner, and it would have stopped all the controversy. But literally, as the corner was taken, he blew the whistle, and I heard it before the guy even made contact with the ball. So you could say a bit of a lucky escape, but that was us up and running. And then I don't know whether you would consider it a great draw or not, but Sturm Graz, who were an Austrian team, had been playing in the Champions League for, I think, 2 or 3 seasons before that. So it was quite a big gun. Yeah. It was certainly one of the bigger teams we could have been drawn against. And I remember remember again having big problems with my knee, and I've had a chat with Jim Leishman and Davie about, you know, whether or not I should feature. And to be honest, I couldn't move. My knee was really swollen, and I was struggling to get around the pitch. But they kind of decided that with my experience, I should play. And after about an hour, it wasn't looking like a great decision because I was struggling. They played a guy in the hole, and I was trying to play against him, and he was quick and his movement was clever. And they gave us an absolute lesson. It was 5-0, and it was looking desperate. And I'm pleased to say that I ventured up for a corner, managed to get a really nice flick on at the near post, which went to the far post for Zarate to score 5-1. Okay, not quite as bad. And then I hit an absolute perler of a half volley from about 30 yards into the bottom corner, 5-2. And we clung on to a 5-2 defeat, which sounds pretty embarrassing, but actually it could have been 10. Yeah. That was as good as it could have been for us. My knee was so bad, I basically said to Leish and Davie, you can't play me in the return leg. I'm a passenger here. So I kind of pulled myself out the firing line. And I remember, you know, sitting watching the return leg, you know, from the stands, injured, but feeling really proud. I was kind of gutted not to be out there, but really proud of the team because the team played fantastically well. The fans had a little moment where they thought, you know, the shock was on. Yeah. I can't remember how the scoring went, but I'm sure we were 2 up at one stage, which meant, you know, 2 more goals and we were going through. So it was crazy to watch. We won the game on the night, but went out on aggregate. But thankfully, we kind of showed more about ourselves in the home leg. And you know what? It was just an amazing feeling. It's quite funny when I kind of joke to people that I've played and scored in the Arnold Schwarzenegger Stadium.
Strangest name for a stadium.
Yeah,
well, some would say the Tony Macaroni Arena is a strange name, but
it is a strange name, but it doesn't compare with the Arnold Schwarzenegger Stadium. Yeah, I mean, it was relatively short-lived, but we have to be honest. I mean, you know, we were not ready for European football, but the fact we got 4 games in there and the fans got the opportunity to have a trip away or 2 trips away was great. And you kind of wanted more, but you know, but that second season was tough for us because we had lost the likes of Fernandez and the team we just weren't quite as competitive. And also I think teams respected us, you know, when we came up against teams, the kind of, you know, the cat was out of the bag, you know, to a large extent. People kind of knew how to play against us, and that second season was quite difficult.
Yeah, as you say, it was a tough season for yourself through injury as well, Stuart. But do you think it was just the case that, as you say, it was that a lot of clubs seem to struggle in the second season more than the first, and it is because teams kind of know a bit more about you? Is that essentially what you think it was the second season?
Yeah, my old team. I remember Reading, you know, second season syndrome when they got promoted to the Premier League, you know, under Steve Coppell, and you know, first time in their history in the Premier League, and they finished, I forget where it was, but it was top 10 certainly. And then second season, you know, they hit the skids and got relegated. And you do tend to find that it's kind of like the bounce factor of, you know, the optimism and the kind of, you know, the good feeling around the place in your first season at a higher level kind of carries you to achievements over and above what you thought you could manage. And then the second season, it's a bit like reality kicks in. And then there's a sense of other teams looking at you and thinking, all right, so we've seen this player and this player and this player. We know what we are. We know what the strengths and weaknesses are. And also, you know, can't ignore the fact that David Fernandez was a huge player for us. Yeah. And obviously he'd been sold to Celtic, and missing him was very tough to replace, and we didn't manage to, you know, and there's no shame in that. You know, David Fernandez was a brilliant player, but there were a combination of things. I mean, I obviously missed a large part of that through injury because my knee, which had become more of a problem for me, was really holding me back. And, you know, I just, for whatever reason, that season it was a forgettable one.
And that summer, it would see Jim Leishman step away as manager. Now, I had Jim on the podcast at the start of the year, Stuart, and he described you as the best captain he's ever had. How did you enjoy working with Jim and Davie and Robbo, as you say?
Yeah, it was a great group. It was a really interesting dynamic in that Jim loved the kind of the chat and the banter and the team talks, and he was a brilliant motivator. One thing I would say is that, you know, you never went into a game feeling flat once Jim had his opportunity to have a team talk. Yeah. He would always find a way of being able to kind of motivate the players and to kind of, lift if there was any flatness in the dressing room. He would get rid of that very quickly, and he was just good at kind of, giving you that bit between the teeth without ever being disrespectful. He was always big on respecting the opposition and talking players up and saying he's really good and you're going to have to be on your game and all this type of stuff. I remember my first ever team talk when we played Hearts in the first game in the SPL. And Jim did a long chat. I mean, it was, I'm going to say 20, 25 minutes. And it just went on and on and on. And I always used to I used to get a rub, from the physio, after the team talk. So Leash went on and on for 20, 25 minutes. Davie did a quick 5 minutes just on the shape and the tactics. And then it's like, on you go, guys. So I went to get a rub and Jim came in. He said, how was that? How was my team talk? I said, great, Jim, really good. If I could just be honest, it just went on just a little bit too long. And he was like, right. Okay, right. I'll keep that in mind. So the next home game, same thing happened. Again, long chat. Might have shaved a few minutes off, but not enough. And I went to get my rub and he came in again and he said, how was it? What did you think? Was that better? I said, still too long, Jim. And he was like, I can't do it any shorter than that. And I was like, 20 minutes. And I said, you lose the guys after 5. And he said, you can't say anything in 5 minutes. I said, well, we're going to have to meet in the middle. That was kind of the thing. And he always used to kind of laugh because it was like, I need to say what I need to say. And I said, you've got to think about, when the guys start getting the glazed look, it's time to stop. Whereas, to be fair to Davie was great because he was big on like, just cut to the chase. This is what we're good at. This is where they're weak. This is what they're good at. This is what they're going to try and do. Yeah. Right. That's it. That's how we're going to play. And yet you have said Robbo primarily, as much as he chipped in with bits and bobs, John was very keen to take the training. He was a young up and coming coach with loads of enthusiasm and ideas, and his training was terrific. So he kind of, the guys, Davie and Leish never took training. Robbo took the training with some help from Alan Preston, and Leish and Davie just used to let him crack on, but Davie in particular would always come out and watch, but he didn't really interfere too much. And it was just a good fit. It was a good dynamic, really good guys to play under. I liked them. I thought they were very good at managing the dressing room. Davie had this kind of, he kind of had this glare that if he wasn't happy, probably not dissimilar to what I've heard about Walter Smith, just that glare. If you got the glare, it was like, okay, he's not happy. But a man of few words, but was, hugely respected by the players. And Jim was just someone that everyone got on with. He was just a nice guy, just really, really good guy to play for. Again, was very, very outgoing and happy-go-lucky and just, always glass half full. And Robbo was really enthusiastic and passionate about the coaching side. So it was a really good blend, the three of them.
Now, you go from one extreme with that management team to the first Brazilian manager in British football, Marcio Maximo, arrived in West Lothian. Now, he was a bit of a character, I believe, as well. But how quickly did the players realise that he didn't actually know R9 Ronaldo? Like, how quickly did that come across?
I mean, I think, I if I'm honest, I kind of felt sorry for him in that I think he had a lot of good ideas. Yeah. He was very clear in his own mind about how he wanted the team to play, and he was kind of ahead of the curve in that he wanted us to press. He wanted the team to press, and he wanted the team to be compact, and he wanted us to even play against the old firm and play right up against them, play 3 up front, and not sit back and all this type of thing. But the language barrier was a problem for him. Yeah. I think as it would be with any foreign coach, if you're not able to communicate properly with your players, and if you're not doing it in your mother tongue, it's obviously going to be difficult. So I, obviously felt a huge responsibility as club captain to try and help him as much as I could. And he was hugely respectful to me because he kind of, I think on the continent, the captain is like a step above the rest of the players. He's almost like a special player. I didn't really want that. I didn't really feel that myself, but that was the relationship I had with him. And I used to have a lot of meetings with him just to try and understand what he was thinking, to try and put it across the players. Some of the guys just weren't having him. I'm not going to name names because it wouldn't be fair, but some of the guys just thought he was absolutely clueless and they didn't see what he was trying to do. And I think some of the guys were just a little bit confused by what he was trying to do. But that was probably the biggest hurdle to overcome was trying to understand the language barrier and what exactly is he asking the team to do. And the only way a manager can ever be successful is if he gets complete buy-in from all his players. Yeah. And I just don't think that he ever got that.
And that season, it would prove to be a difficult one off the pitch for the club. Financial problems kind of hit the club and we went into administration. But when did you realise that the club was struggling financially behind the scenes? When did that become apparent to the players?
I remember actually getting my knuckles rapped because I was asked by, I can't remember whether it was a written journalist or someone on the radio, but someone there was a comment made about Dundee had financial difficulties and had gone into administration, and obviously whenever you see it happening at another club, it does kind of make you take a step back and think, oh, if it could happen to them, it could happen to us. You don't necessarily kind of join the dots and think it's going to happen to us, but I made that observation, just about, you always wonder if everything's rosy in the garden. And I remember that comment was filtered back to Dominic Keane, who wasn't happy in the slightest. And Davie pulled me, wasn't like Davie, we were traveling to an away game, but he pulled me to the front of the coach and he said, I think you better speak to the chairman. He's not happy with the comment that you've made. And I remember, I thought it was quite an innocent comment, and I just didn't think there was much to it to get upset about. And if I'm honest, I thought it was quite an overreaction on his part to kind of get upset because I'd said, you just wonder if everything's okay at your place. I wasn't suggesting that anything, behind that, but, I was kind of forced to eat humble pie. And I said to Davie, no problem. And I phoned him and he was just like, you guys always get paid on time and I make sure that it's done right and all this type of stuff. And I said, okay, no problem. I'm sorry that you took the comment that way. It wasn't that long afterwards that the reality hit that we actually, were in financial difficulty. And if I'm honest, it really put my nose out of joint because I remember thinking there's no way in the world that we went from being in a really good financial position to being in trouble in the space of a few months. So I think I touched a raw nerve, and that was the one thing. Listen, it doesn't matter. Egos can clash all they like. But I remember when it did actually come out, I remember thinking, all right, so it turns out my comment was actually a lot closer to the bone than it should have been. And, it was purely just a throwaway remark from me. But here we go. A few months down the line, we're in financial difficulty. The club's on the verge of administration. And then, of course, reality hits where you're kind of thinking, right, okay, so who's it going to affect? We had seen there had been a big cull at Dundee. And of course, instantly you kind of look at your own club and think, well, if it happened there, something similar is going to happen here. And then that's when the kind of selfish thing kicks in where you think, am I going to be one of the guys that gets emptied? Because it's a really weird scenario in football that you're all kind of trying to work together as a group and create a good team spirit and a togetherness. And then suddenly you think, well, if they're going to have to cut the wage bill, they're going to have to get rid of players. And you just start thinking about yourself, which is just human nature. I knew that I was one of the higher paid players. I didn't know where I ranked in the wage structure, but I knew I was nearer the top than the bottom. And I wasn't sure whether being club captain was going to be a help or a hindrance. I didn't know whether my wage was going to be a problem. I kind of thought, well, it's not going to help me. And then, of course, conversations started when the administrators, Kroll, were brought in officially, and we were put into administration. And then at that point, things unravel really quickly. And Davie kind of had conversations with a few of the players to explain the situation and said that the administrator was trying to keep the group together as much as he could, but big cuts had to be made. So a number of players were approached about taking a cut in wages. Some, I think, were asked to take 25%. Some of the bigger hitters, myself included, were asked to take 50%. I went to speak to Davie myself, and I just kind of said, it's a hell of a thing to be asked to take a 50% cut and you're not getting the money back. It's like, it's gone. Yeah. It's not like wages deferred. It's down the Swanee, and don't get me wrong, we were well paid, in terms of our salary, but, compared to some of the ridiculous salaries that were being paid at some of the other clubs, certainly Hibs were throwing money around at the time. Hearts were, Aberdeen were always good payers, Dundee United were good payers, and the Old Firm were like stratospheric compared to us. You kind of looked at it and thought, wow, how has this happened? But Davie just kind of said to me, look, you don't have to accept it, but if you don't, there's a chance that you won't get kept on.
Yeah.
So he said, my advice to you is to accept it. And to be honest, I felt a responsibility. I kind of thought, well, I can't just walk away from this. I thought it would send a horrendous message. So it didn't take very long to decide. I just kind of said, no problem. We'll do what we have to do. And there were a handful of us who took the cut, but it still wasn't enough. And obviously some players had to leave. And I think that was the hardest part. It was when you saw certain players, you know, Keno was the one that springs to mind, because he was massively popular with the players and with the fans.
Yeah.
You know, he was kind of part of the group that, you know, helped us achieve third place, played in Europe. And he was just a great guy, great player, very well respected. And he had been in and out of the team that season, and they were just kind of looking at the stats saying, you know,
he's not featuring, so
if he's not playing week in and week out, he's expendable, which was a horrendously sad way of looking at it. But I don't envy, you know, the administrators and the job they had to do. They had to kind of make a cut, and they did that. Sharif Toure Maman as well. It was, again, it was a bit of a fan's favourite. And it was just a tricky situation. Not tricky. It was much worse than that. It was just awful, because there were staff as well. You start to kind of see, you know, the knock-on effect of the administrator just kind of saying, you know, if someone can do two jobs for the price of one, I'm going to get them to do it and go for the cheaper option. So yeah, the knock-on effect of the administration was horrendous, and of course our squad was kind of, you know, not sliced in half, but certainly we lost some key members. So we were a thinner squad, and yet we were still in the latter stage of a cup competition, being asked to go and win a cup competition, and kind of think, how are you going to be able to do that if you've lost as many players as we had? But, you know, that's when the kind of, you know, the professionalism kicks in, where you just kind of say, well, you know, nothing we can do about it. Just got to get your head down and, you know, and well, just try and find something from within to try and, you know, achieve something in adversity.
You're touching it perfectly there, leading me on to my next question. And that, I'm sure it was either the day before or the day off the semi-final, where players had been, you know, made redundant essentially. How, as a footballer, do you just manage to click a switch and go into playing game mode? Like, you've just offered to take a pay cut, you know, other players have done the same. How do you go from that to just switching on for a cup semi-final like that? The mental toughness that must take is incredible.
That was definitely one of the hardest periods in my career. And you do have as a senior player, you feel added responsibility, because we had younger guys in the group that probably had no clue what was going on. And I think there was also the situation for me of being club captain. So you feel, again, the added responsibility, where you have to kind of park your feelings. I mean, to be honest, the 50% cut was I kind of dealt with that very quickly and just kind of said, that's what needs to be done. I'm staying. So, you know, that's what I wanted to do. That's what I felt was my obligation. And then you kind of look around and think, right, who else needs help? Who's struggling to deal with this? Who can we speak to try and lift their spirits, keep their morale up? I remember speaking to Davie. We were due to stay in a hotel in the Grassmarket in Edinburgh as preparation for the semi-final against Dundee. And I kind of said to him, should we really be doing that, given the financial situation? You know, it just doesn't look right. Should we not stay at home and prepare that way? And he said, well, it's already been paid. The bill's been paid for up front. So he said, I'd rather prepare this way and we're not losing any money. So we're not going to get a refund. We may as well just do it. So I remember we were walking around the Grassmarket. We went out for a walk on the morning of the game, and the atmosphere was not great, as you can imagine, not great at all. We were 24 hours after guys losing their jobs, and I think guys were just kind of feeling really flat. And David said to me, you know, we need to find a way to, you know, to kind of speak to the boys and get them going. And I said, I think they'll be all right. I said, it's just my gut feeling. I think when we get in the dressing room and you start putting the strips out and the boots and the shin pads and all that, I said, it's just going to be like game mode will kick in. And it's exactly what happened. It's kind of what I thought would happen, because it's what I thought would happen for myself. Yeah. Once you actually put the kit on and you kind of realize what's at stake, you know, you'll forget about all the other issues that are going on outside of that particular match and just knuckle down and play 90 minutes or extra time or whatever's required. And that's exactly what happened. You know, it wasn't a brilliant game of football by any means, but we dug in. You know, we had a lot of resilient players in that group, a lot of guys who were able to kind of, you know, find an extra kind of 5 or 10%, to make sure that we won the game.
And as you say, we would go on to win 1-0. A dramatic late penalty from Derek Lilly would take us to the final at Hampden. What are your memories of the build up to the final? I know you'd obviously been involved with likes of Reading and playoff finals, Hibs in the Scottish Cup final as well. So what was the build up like for this one?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I didn't really feel nervous at that stage. I was into my 30s. I was experienced. I'd obviously played in a huge game at Wembley when I was at Reading, the playoff final in front of 70-something thousand people, which was a massive game. And I'd obviously been part of playing in semi-finals and finals with Hibs. So, had enough kind of big game experience. And yeah, I mean, there was part of me that kind of thought this might be my last chance to win a cup competition. Yeah. So it was a case of don't waste it. But I didn't want to be overawed by the occasion. I kind of knew that I wouldn't, but I spoke to the guys a lot in the lead up to the game. We had, some of the younger guys just kind of say, you're going to feel butterflies and you're going to have some nerves stood in the tunnel and stuff like that. Just accept it, embrace it. If you don't, it would be weird. I didn't, fun enough, but I kind of knew that I wouldn't. I was quite calm before the game, but I really, really liked the matchup. I just kind of, if you look back at that season, I think we played Hibs 5 times and we beat them 4 times. And there was no coincidence in that. We were just a bad matchup for them. If you looked at us, the players that we had compared to what they had, we had experience. They didn't. We had legs in the right area. They didn't. We were great on the counter. They weren't. It was just we were just a nightmare for them. And I was very, very confident. I really fancied us going into the game. And it was just a case of saying to the guys, just not easy to try and play it as just another game, but that's how you have to treat it. And I kind of kept banging that drum in the whole week leading up to the match, just to kind of say just play the game, not the occasion. And maybe not so easy when you come out the tunnel and you've got like 40,000 Hibs fans there. Some of the guys I think kind of looked around and thought, but we'd mentioned that a lot and said, look, they're going to have the crowd, but we're not playing 40,000 Hibs fans. Yeah. We're playing this team who we know we're better than, and I still maintain, I mean, that season we were a top 6 side. We just had an awful lot of stuff going on the periphery that stopped us from being a top 6 side and achieving a top 6 finish. But we were a top 6 side. When you look at the teams who finished top 6, we were, we were certainly someone that should have been in the mix. There was just too much other stuff going on, too much crap to deal with. But we were certainly a really good team on our. We were an excellent cup side because we could turn it on when it mattered. And as much as I've seen the game just once, I think since, and it's not a classic by any means, but I do remember Davie going through David Fernandez like a dose of salts at halftime, and he was kind of like teacher's pet. David Fernandez was just kind of, never got any criticism, and he was kind of allowed to train as badly as he wanted and still get away with it. But I think
I could just imagine it as well.
Yeah, he was, he was just, and he was, but again, he was a hard guy to fall out with, David, and he was a hard guy to kind of get annoyed with, because he would just kind of give you that stupid smile or a silly laugh, and you'd kind of, you couldn't be angry with him for long. But he was a massively important player for us, and we needed him to turn it on. And he was hopeless in the first half. He was absolutely hopeless. He was Hibs' best player. He kept giving the ball away time after time after time. And Davie actually kind of came in and said, "You got 10 minutes. You got 10 minutes because you're as well coming and sitting next to me. 10 minutes, And ironically, he won the game himself. Yeah. He absolutely terrorized Hibs for a 15, 20-minute spell in the second half, and and just kind of did what he did brilliantly, which was drop into pockets and start linking up, and got us to play a bit more. And we had a really good spell either side of half time, and he was pivotal to that. And his bit of play for the second goal when he put in Jamie McAllister to score. And I have to be honest, people say 2-0 is not a great score. You're still close enough. But I never felt under threat. When we went 2-0 up, I was very, very confident that we'd see the game out, because I just thought us being able to play on the counter attack is perfect, because one, it's the way we play well, and two, they just haven't got enough to break us down, which is how it turned out.
And as you say, it would be quick fire goals from Derek Lilly and Jamie McAllister that would seal the League Cup, and it would be coming back to West Lothian. I know you'd had some final disappointments before, as you kind of touched on with Reading and Hibs. So how was that moment getting to go up as captain, lifting the League Cup at Hampden?
I mean, a bit weird because, 40,000 fans disappeared sharpish. So it was like, 7/8 empty. We had our pocket of Livy fans to the left. So if you see it, normally when you see the captains kind of lift the trophy, I always have a little chuckle to myself because they're always kind of pointing out kind of from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Yeah. Whereas we didn't have anyone. There was no one opposite the tunnel, and all the way to the right had been Hibs fans, they were gone, and all the way to the left to kind of like 9 o'clock or even 8 o'clock. There was it was empty. So I just kind of had to turn directly to my left to kind of show the trophy to the fans, because that was the section that the Livy fans had. And you hear cliches about people saying not being able to process it and stuff like that. I kind of did my best at the time to absorb what it was like, because you're right, I had disappointments, and they're huge. The one for Reading in particular was massive for me because of my own kind of personal contribution to the game and how it panned out, but also just the fact that we were 2-0 up in a game that we really should have won, and we kind of blew it. And that was a devastating defeat. And then, I was part of a Hibs team that lost 3-0 to Celtic, but I only played the last 10 minutes. So it was just a bit of an empty feeling. So I was trying to absorb as much of it as I could, because, even at that time, you kind of realize 32 years old, probably not likely to be back here again, without wishing to be too downbeat. So you try and, take in as much of the atmosphere and the feelings as you can. But it's never easy to do that until the aftermath of, not even later on the evening, it's the days after, when you're just getting constant messages from people and phone calls and press and stuff like that. And it seemed to roll on for weeks. And one of the things that we did to try and drum up interest in Livingston, which is extraordinary when you consider we were going out to all the schools in and around Livingston, primary schools and secondary schools, to go and speak to people to say, come along and see us in the cup final, because we just weren't selling our allocation, which was mental to me, but that was the way it was. And I actually made a promise to lots of schools. I said, I never said if, I said, when we win the trophy, I'm going to come back and bring the trophy to. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of going around to the various schools in and around the area, whether it was myself or other players, just to kind of get them to see the trophy, because we knew it was a momentous achievement for the club, for Livingston and for West Lothian. So we kept our promise and went everywhere that we could. But in terms of on the day itself, you're kind of in a bit of a trance, really. It's hard to describe.
And you were also named man of the match on the day as well. Now, I believe there's a bit of disagreement with some of your teammates over that one.
Well, I mean, Roddy doesn't disagree. He just flat out disapproves. I don't know whether he thought he was a contender, because I don't remember him. He did make a couple of good saves, in fairness, but I don't remember him being that busy. You couldn't give it to Fernandez because he played well for 10 minutes. And I don't, you know what? I'm the least interested person in Man of the Match awards. I just think they're the most trivial and just pointless. It's almost, I think they're worth even less than man of, Player of the Year I accept is a good one, but Player of the Month I think is laughable, because you can have like a good game and a half and that gets you, score a hat trick and you get Player of the Month. Man of the Match, again, never bought into it, not interested. The reason I got it, there's no doubt in my mind, is that I was lucky enough in the last part of my career at Reading to play with Ray Houghton, who was one of the great Liverpool players in the kind of Kenny Dalglish era, and he was I'm a Liverpool fan from when I was like yay high, so he was one of my favourite players in a brilliant Liverpool team, and I got to play with Ray at Reading. Great guy, brilliant pro, just a fantastic mentor for me, and always gotten really well with him. And he was doing the commentary for Channel 5, I think it was that day. So yeah, I would imagine there was a bit of bias in his decision, maybe more than a bit of bias. Did I play well that day? I thought I had a decent game. I did what I did for Livingston, which was I got the ball and I nudged it around and I gave it to people who would have more influence. And I made sure that our shape was good and we were hard to break down. It wasn't my most influential with the ball by any means, but I came off kind of feeling like I did my job, and I was always happy with that because the team came first for me, particularly as captain. The team absolutely comes first. So I don't know who Roddy thinks should have won it, but he may have a point that it probably shouldn't have been me. Or I did try and say to him, in the grand scheme of things, we all got a medal and we all get to kind of share in this moment. And that's the important thing. So I don't think he's that upset about it anymore. I bumped into him recently and he didn't mention it. So he's maybe moved on.
It's all about who you know in the game though, Stuart, isn't
Correct.
it?
Absolutely. Not what you know, it's who you know. I knew Ray Houghton, he didn't. That was it, job done.
And there would be some quite strange celebrations after the game with the open top bus going through West Lothian. How surreal was that experience of going through?
Absolutely hilarious. One of my favourite moments, one of my favourite memories from football was driving around a pitch black Livingston with literally no one on the streets. And we, to be fair, we had such a good group. We all saw the ire in it. It was just ridiculous. I mean, I'm guessing that West Lothian Council weren't particularly fancying our chances of winning because there was absolutely nothing put on whatsoever. Yeah. Not a sausage. We went back to the stadium and my overriding memory is of David McNamee getting on a push bike and cycling this push bike on the pitch, twirling a Livy flag above his head. Don't know where he got this bike from. It was absolutely knackered, a BMX of some description. And again, it was kind of typical Livingston because, we kind of went back there and it was a tricky one because people had their cars there, but you were kind of feeling like, got to have a few beers because, we've got to try and celebrate as best we can, but I'll have to leave my car. How am I going to get home? I've no idea. I can't remember much about the night, to be honest. We got our money's worth, let's put it that way. But it was, it was funny, just the kind of, the fake open top bus parade with one man and his dog out was kind of just typical of the achievement. And it's, it's in the grand scheme of things, open top buses, I always think they're more for the fans to show their support for the players. So we didn't lose any sleep over it. It was, we brought the trophy back to West Lothian, which was the main thing.
And it would prove to be a summer of change at the club as well. Pierce Flynn taking over the club and Alan Preston was appointed manager as well. What was the mood like amongst the players? Obviously, administration had finished, but there was also Davie Hay leaving, who's played a massive part in the club's rise as well. So what was the mood like amongst the players?
Well, and again, key players moved on. So David Fernandez, who had come back to us on loan from Celtic, went back. Marvin, I think I remember, went to Rangers that summer. Yeah. Jamie McAllister went to Hearts. Yeah. And the list goes on. I mean, our team was decimated. Yeah. And obviously the club were still coming out of the administration process. New owners came in. I'm not really sure even now how much I can say about the owners and their approach to it. Let's just say mistakes were made. I'm probably on safe ground to be able to say that. Why would you dispense with the services of someone like Davie Hay with his knowledge and experience and, cut to the chase, popularity with the players? Yeah. It ain't that easy to find someone that the fans like and the players like and who knows what he's doing. And yet he was asked to leave. And, I kind of get why they wanted to give Alan Preston more responsibility. Yeah. I always thought he was a terrific coach. He was someone that obviously worked closely with John Robertson when Robbo was at the club. And Biscuits was a really good coach. People enjoyed his sessions. And for me, the combination of making him manager and Alan Kernan as assistant, I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that dynamic. I didn't understand why they got rid of Davie Hay. But you know what? They made choices they were entitled to because they were the owners of the club. I think we can safely say it didn't work.
And it was a tough start to that campaign as well with the club. It was quite clear early doors that we were going to be in a bit of a scrap. Do you think it, as you mentioned, do you think it was mainly down to the number of players that had left, that huge turnover in the summer?
Yeah, you have to be honest. If you there were remnants of the administration process that people probably didn't appreciate. But of course, when you come out of administration, the club has got a clean slate, but you're then weighing up how much money you've got coming in and or how much money the owners are putting in, or whatever, whichever way you want to look at it. They've got to crunch the numbers, and the salaries went down. I know that for a fact because I signed a new contract, and let's just say it was nowhere near what I'd been getting paid in the past. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that would have been the case all across the board. So we lost some of our best players. The average salaries were going down quite significantly. And yeah, I mean, we just didn't have a great playing staff. We weren't strong. We had an inexperienced, manager and an inexperienced coach. I mean, Alan Kernan had been a manager at Clyde and places like this. But the setup for me was just it felt like it was thrown together, and it just had the feeling of that season. I remember us kind of starting off. I'm pretty sure we beat Inverness Cali Thistle comfortably.
I think you scored.
I did score. I think that was my last ever goal for Livi, if I remember rightly, and we won. And I remember seeing Inverness Cali Thistle and thinking, well, we're not going to finish bottom because they're hopeless. And they actually got themselves together, fairly quickly. But we just got progressively worse, and the confidence was shot to pieces, and there was just a disconnect between the players and the coaching staff. That didn't really work. The owners weren't happy with the players or the coaching staff, so that didn't work. And I think the fans could kind of see in front of their eyes what was crumbling. So that was tough for them to take because, let's be honest, Livi fans had been completely spoiled in the previous few seasons of finishing third, playing in Europe, winning a cup competition. They weren't used to failure, and it was very much the way it was going. So it was tough for everyone to take, and it's horrible when you can see things taking a downward spiral and you want to arrest the slide and you can't. And I felt like I was at a point where, my influence on the pitch was less than I wanted it to be. I wasn't as mobile as I used to be. I had two dodgy knees at that point. The left one was really bad, and I kind of felt like my influence on the pitch was nowhere near what it had been in the first few seasons, and that's always frustrating because you want to lead by example, and I wasn't really able to do that. But we just didn't have a great group. It wasn't rocket science. We didn't have a brilliant squad. We were one of the poorest squads in there. I had my own difficulties in that I carried out an interview with the guy from the Sunday Times, which the owners disapproved of and made it very, very difficult for me at that point. And that was the beginning of the end for me with my time at Livingston. I think if the owners had their way, I would have been gone. Fortunately for me, Richard Gough was great and kind of at least allowed me to come back into the squad for a period. And then we had quite a frank conversation in January. And I said to him, listen, you're going to need someone very different to what I can offer, in this team to be able to drive it forward. You need legs, you need mobility, you need energy and stuff like that. And we were just very open and honest about it. And he kind of said to me, well, we'll allow you to head off if you want to try something different. I wasn't, to be honest, I left Livi because I wasn't enjoying being there at that point. Yeah. My relationship with the owners was irreparable as far as I was concerned. They wanted me gone. I managed to kind of keep my job by the skin of my teeth, but I didn't want to be there. They didn't want me there. It was better for everyone just to kind of, sever ties and move on. And listen, it wasn't how I would have wanted it to finish at Livingston, but football's not a fairy tale. You don't forget all the good things that happened. I had a lot more good memories from my time at Livingston than bad ones. So that's got to be a positive.
Now, it wouldn't be the last time you would play at Livi. You ended up featuring in Keegan Jacobs' testimonial for the Legends team. I actually bumped into you a couple of weeks after it. Have the knees finally recovered from playing 11s again?
Yeah. Do you know, I think that's one of the things that, that's one of the things that fans have got over us is that, they don't have the wear and tear and the dodgy joints that ex-players have. I dip my toe in every now and then to have a game of 5s or 7s or whatever with people when they ask. And I regret it the next day, because it takes me, I'm not joking, it takes me a week to recover. My knee swells up. I can't move. I walk like RoboCop. I remember obviously playing against the guys. We were playing against the Livi first team at the time. And it was tough because, they were fit. I mean, that's one thing you say about, the Livi team under David Martindale is they are fit. Yeah. So they were super quick around the pitch. And we had some good players, to be honest. The shape of our team, we had some great players, and the makeup of our team was decent enough. But all I was trying to do was just not embarrass myself. I tried to train for several weeks in the lead up to try and get my weight down to a manageable level. But when you're in your late 40s playing against guys who are 20 years younger, you're fighting a losing battle.
It was always going to be a difficult one for you, but you didn't shame yourself, Stuart, certainly. Now,
that's nice of you to say that.
But overall, Stuart, how do you reflect on your time at Livi in comparison to kind of the rest of your career, where you've had successful spells elsewhere?
Oh, listen, I mean, I only had 4 clubs in my career, and I mean, Queen of the South was only for 15 months. So, I spent the majority of my career at Reading, where I came through the ranks as a schoolboy and an apprentice and then a pro. I moved up to Edinburgh to play with Hibs for 3 years, and then Livi for, I kind of call it 4 seasons really. And great memories from my time there. I'm not interested in platitudes, and I'm not a great fan of kind of patting myself on the back for the things that I've done and stuff like that. I know what I was, and I know what type of player I was, and I know what I contributed. But the one thing I always get when I go back to Livingston is you see pictures of the team that I played in, everywhere. It's you can't avoid it, whether you like it or not. And there is a massive sense of pride to be able to look at the pictures, not just of the team that won the cup, but of the team that finished third and the different players that I played with. And you'll know this better than me, being a supporter, but it's nice to be part of the group that is the most successful team in the history of the club. It's still a relatively young club, but at the moment, no one has surpassed the achievements of the group I played in, which is nice. I mean, I don't walk around Livingston puffing my chest out saying the team I played in is miles better than yours and yours and yours and yours and yours. But the reality is, it was better. Yeah. Our achievements are there in black and white. I would love to have seen the team win the League Cup, back in February against St Johnstone. Didn't happen, and you kind of hope that they'll get another shot. I'm sure they will. But, finishing third and winning the cup is kind of there, right at the top of the achievements of this club, and being part of 2 different squads that manage that is, there's a lot to be proud of.
And since you have retired, you've obviously dipped your toe in a few things, media work. You were involved with PFA for a number of years as well, and I know you're involved with the Youth Foundation at Livi as well. What is it you're doing with yourself these days? I believe you've got a new project with street soccer.
Correct. Yeah. I work with a brilliant charity called Street Soccer Scotland. Yeah, I mean, essentially, this was a charity that was started by an amazing guy called David Duke, who was born and brought up in Govan, but he's a Celtic fan. Try and work that one out. But just an amazing guy, David. One of these people that when you meet him, he's just really authentic and just, he's just got goodness coming out of every pore. He's just a brilliant guy. Just wants to help people, and he set up the charity on the basis of football had rescued him. He came from quite a chaotic background and quite difficult time where he had been homeless for a while and had issues with drink and drugs and whatnot, and football was kind of the thing that brought him back. He forged a very close relationship with the late great Ali Dawson, ex-Rangers player who has played a massive part in helping David to build Street Soccer Scotland up into what it is today. I've been working for the charity for just over a year now, and we do adult drop-in sessions around different parts of the country. So there's lots of programs being run in Aberdeen and Dundee and Edinburgh and Glasgow. And I'm pleased to say we've literally just started one in Livingston. Excellent. Just 2 weeks ago.
What timing to have you on, Stuart? What timing?
Yeah, I know. And you'll, I'm sure you'll agree that we didn't come on here to plug that, but
no.
When we first spoke, I wasn't even sure whether the session will have started, but I run the network program. So my role is to create new drop-in sessions outside of the 4 main cities, because we don't want street soccer just to be for people, in the big towns and cities. So we run a session in Stirling, in Raploch on a Friday afternoon, and then Thursdays 11:30 till 1 we're at the back pitch. We have to state that, the back pitch at, I still call it Armanvale, old habits die hard. So we're on the back pitch around the back of the stadium there, which obviously is through, that pitch is kind of managed primarily by West Lothian Community Foundation, which, as you mentioned, I'm a trustee of. So Andy Todd was kind enough to kind of grant us access, and been running that session now for 2 weeks. And I was out at Blackburn Recovery Community Partnership yesterday, speaking to some of the adults there to twist their arm and persuade them to come down and have a free game of football. And effectively what we do is we put on the free game of football, and then we help people build relationships, and people who are kind of socially isolated, people who've had issues with long-term mental health, long-term unemployment, people who've been in recovery for a while, people who've had issues with homelessness. It's very much a case of people who really, need a free game of football and the opportunity to try and build relationships and try and help people get back on the straight and narrow. So it's a brilliant charity. Absolutely love the guys that I work with, and I think we're doing a lot of good. And the fact we brought a session to Livingston, it was a natural progression for me because I know the area well, and obviously it's nice to be able to put something on in the area, which is a big part of my life.
Well, being involved in community football myself, I realise how big impact football can make. So it's a fantastic charity you're involved with, Stuart. And as you say, it's great to see you getting back involved at the football club in some capacity as well. But Stuart, I can't express how happy I am to have got to speak to you today about your time at the football club. To put it bluntly, you're a hero of mine, growing up, lifting the League Cup, and I'm sure Livy fans will be absolutely delighted to have heard from you. But thank you so much for coming on, taking the time to speak to me, and obviously wish you the best with all the projects that you're involved with just now.
That's very kind of you. I appreciate being given the opportunity to come on, and obviously, my time at Livingston is one that I won't forget. It's a big part of my career, so having the opportunity to share it with you has been great. And I'm sure I'll bump into the guys who watch this down at the ground some point this season. I'm still doing bits and bobs for Sky Sports, and I'll be down to cover a game before too long. So look forward to seeing everyone down there.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Armanvale. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston. We love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Armanvale Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, to the Premier.